Hey everyone, it's James from Wheeloftime here, aka The Dark 2, and I'm bringing a bit of a different video today. This will probably be part of a series, a long-running series that takes place over the course of months with 4 episodes, because this is a video about how to play with the first ever variant of play of Third Age, which is going to be used in next month's League. And I wanted to do a primer series so I can focus on how to use each of the variants. So the first portion of this video is going to be how traits work in this instance. The variant of the month is traits, and then after that we're going to go through each of the 10 different traits that are available, and of course I'll explain what those are in just a minute, and discuss each of the options of characters in those traits. And you'll see what I mean as we get into this, but it could be quite a long video. I'm going to put timestamps in so you can jump around to the parts that you want to see. I recommend all League players at least to watch the first 10 minutes or so, or however long it ends up being up to the end of the introduction, so you know how to play traits at the very least, even if you don't want to see the deeper strategy behind each of those traits. Okay, so with all that being said, I'm going to make myself tiny so that y'all can see pretty much everything as we go into this. I might cover up a tiny bit of the screen, but yeah. And this is probably going to be unedited, so bear with me while I keep myself hydrated with pop and vape and whatnot. But let's get into this. Thematic traits, the Q1 variant. Alright, so what are traits? As you can see, there's 10 of them that I already mentioned, and a trait is a card that you select at the start of the game. During setup, everybody picks their character as normal, and then in reverse character pick order, you select your traits. So the person who picked their character last picks their trait at the same time, essentially. And then reverse order back for everyone else. Your trait for the rest of the game gives you a couple of benefits. The first is that followers of your type, so each trait is either a type or a nation. We've got Aes Sedai, Aiel, Andoran, Borderlander, Cairhienin, Noble, Soldier, Two Rivers, Whitecloak, and Warder. And whatever your chosen trait is, those followers cost you 1 fewer of each resource to recruit. And they cost everyone else 1 more of each resource. That means that if you have the, let's say, the Two Rivers trait, and you flip over a Bran Alvear, he is completely free. But if somebody else flips over a Bran Alvear, they have to pay 2 coins and 1 favour for him, rather than the usual 1 coin cost. And that's active for the entirety of the game, regardless of the position that your trait is in. Because the second thing that these traits do is they give you a cooldown ability, similar to what a follower might have, or your tier 3 ability. And when you use that, you rotate the trait, and after a few turns it comes back around, you can use it again. And it allows you to replace revealing a character from one of the decks with searching for a follower of your chosen trait. So you can just dig up and choose whoever you want that's Aes Sedai or Whitecloak or whoever you have picked for that given game. And then in a few turns when that comes back around, you can use it again. So those are the 2 main benefits that come from traits. The only other thing that is on these to differentiate them are the starting resources. And each trait has modified starting resources from the usual 3 silver, 1 favour, 3 actions that you start the game with. For example, the Borderlanders start with only 1 of each, but the Nobles get 4 coins, 3 favour, and 4 actions. This is due to the balancing of each of the individual traits, some of the nations and types have fewer options available and less power generally, so those that are on the higher power scale in terms of how powerful the trait is in the game have lower starting resources. Generally, you'll see that with the Borderlanders, the Andorans. There's a couple of cases where lower starting resources, especially action cards, is due to the power of the followers available in that trait. So that is basically a rundown of how traits works, and it only took 5 minutes, not 10. That's traits. You know how to play it now. If you know how to play regular Third Age, you just pick one of these at the start of the game in reverse turn order, and then it's with you for the rest of the game. You have that awesome effect, modified starting resources, and you can reduce stuff, make other people's more expensive, and dig up your own followers. Of course, this has a gigantic knock-on effect on the way that you play the game, because it means that you can open up so many different strategies that previously would have required incredibly lucky flips to assemble the pieces to make. There are some really potent and powerful things that you can do in traits games, and in all the practice I've had, which is a fair amount at this point, the one thing that I've found is that I'm never out of gas once I get to the late game. I always have a fight. I'm ready for a fight, or I'm about to be ready for a fight in a turn or two. So it's a sort of a power creep above regular Third Age. And it's one that I'm excited to see the long-term results of, at least across March League. But now it's time for the meat of this video. I'm going to go through each of these traits in alphabetical order, and I've got 4 slides for each trait. I've got lovely categories separated so we can go over, first up, what are the big hitters, then cover the economical base of each trait, then we can look at the utility options available, and finally the supporting cast. So first up is going to be Aes Sedai. Alright, the full 6 slots here on big hitters. So generally big hitters tends to have a lot of combat strength involved in it, and you can see this at the bottom row there, with Adlorna giving +1 for each Aes Sedai, and I think there's about 20 Aes Sedai, so that number can get very high. Elaine also plus combat strength, but for Andorans, which you'll have less of, especially if someone else has picked that trait. But one thing that's probably good to cover off the bat before I get fully into the Aes Sedai thing, actually, is that when there's crossover, that can, and by crossover I mean if I have the Aes Sedai trait and you have the Andoran trait, then our cost reduction and cost inflation cancel each other out. So we're basically paying regular costs for them outside of other reduction effects. Because we can search them up as well, there's also a bit of do I have to get this follower earlier than I would necessarily want to in my search order, because the other person could take it as well, and if they take it away from me, it's really bad. From the perspective of an Aes Sedai player playing against an Andoran, if they manage to hit tier 3 first and search up a lane, they've taken a huge tool away from the Andoran player, because that combat strength is going to be way more important for them than it is for you. So yeah, that's a good thing to cover generally when thinking about traits. And these plus combat strength bonuses get high, especially with Aes Sedai, who have a lot of different Aes Sedai, but even in the other traits, as you'll see, there's a lot of these characters now, and there has been new characters released to up that amount. So don't sleep on the battle effects, because those are what make a lot of these traits really powerful in execution. Gareth Bryn, see him highlighted in red there to indicate that he's not actually an Aes Sedai, but he does have an Aes Sedai related effect. So I did put him on this slide. And at the top row there, we've got Cadsuane, who a lot of you are familiar with, but Romanda and Lelaine, who are newer. Lelaine, if you have more Aes Sedai than anyone else, allows you to pick up tier 2 actions from the discard pile rather than drawing cards. Exhaust cooldown ability, of course, but a very powerful effect to have. You can pick up a Blood Knife Ring, you can pick up a Careful Prep, you can pick up a Call Lightning, the Charge, Battle Bond. There's all sorts of powerful tier 2 abilities that Lelaine can pick up, so that's a highly prioritized one. And Romando, on the other hand, is a fantastic tool if someone's trying to kill off your followers, because if you're trying to build up all your Aes Sedai and somebody else kills off a specific one, such as Adalorna, that you really need to capitalize on that mass value, then having Romanda means you can just recruit Adalorna back from the discard pile, and it's basically like nothing happened. Interesting to note though that these do have an effect buff that are free if another player has the other one in their party, so watch out for that, especially if there's crossover with the Borderlander on the lane, because somebody could steal one of those away from you if you've searched one up already. I think that's pretty much all I need to cover for the big hitter slide. Moving on, talk about the economy. It should be a real quick thing. Most of the traits have these sort of cost reduction things. Not all, and not all have both the coin and the favour, but Dagian and Vandin here, you can see, both reduce the cost of Aes Sedai followers, so they're great to get into your party early on. And Adelaus, once you hit tier 2, allows you to draw an action every time you recruit an Aes Sedai, so you probably want to get her early in the tier 2 phase, so that you can be like rocketing up from that ability. Maybe unless you're playing Rand, but even still, it's a triggered reaction, you can choose not to trigger it. Vandine and Daigin, on the other hand, yeah, you want to get those very early. I tend to go for Vandine first, because she'll be reduced to 1/1 in cost on like your first turn. And then when your trait comes back around again, you fetch up Dagian, because she is free if you have an Aes Sedai with high level. And then you're at -2/2 to all your Aes Sedai recruits for the rest of the game, which just puts you in perfect position. Of course, Vandine and Adalas free off each other as well, worth noting. Definitely with traits, finding followers with free requisites on them can come up more often than it would usually, because you can dig specific people up at specific times. So make sure you are checking those free if boxes to see who in your traits you can get for free under what conditions. Moving on to the utility page, there's a few different things here. Elida gives what I'm gonna call the turbo effect for the remainder of this. It's generally what I'd call it anyway, so we call that the turbo, and that means when a follower's exhausted of Aes Sedai, or when any channeling follower, actually, I just realised that, I thought she was just Aes Sedai, but it's any channeling follower, it turns them an extra 90 degrees immediately. This is a really powerful effect. It means you can, you know, if you rotate your Alana to use her ability and pick up an order card, she spends an extra time, and then she's ready 1 turn faster. If you have attachments in particular, this effect can be really nice to get the Aes Sedai with attachments, or the channeling followers with attachments, to rotate just that much quicker and come back around. Swan Sanche and Alana both allow you to pick up weaves and orders, tier 1 or lower, from the discard pile. Tier 1, not tier 1 or lower, there is no lower. Sylviana has an anytime ability, which are kind of rare, and she can just disarm basically someone, but you don't need to have a way to tap her, it's just she does it with her own ability at any time. So this can be really handy, you know, if someone flips over a Forsaken and you just go, oh, okay, I'll disarm your Rodel because you're about to fight. Seems good. Cien can search up black Argars and battle them, so just a bit of a utility if you want to find a tier 2 fight. And there is some, like, upside in certain circumstances to the Butcher's Bills. Sorry, not the Butcher's Bills, but more so the rewards on a couple of those black Arger, like drawing 3 off Alviarin or making another player discard a card. It could come up, so and it does let you search from the discard pile as well, so you can repeatedly kill the same target with Cien. And finally, Cairhienin, used to save somebody's life. Great to have in the team. And the final slide for Aes Sedai, we have the supporting cast. Not too much to say here. Morel can find you some warders, bit of extra combat strength only against Dark Friends though from Pavara, and then some disarm on the Mygan, Murrain, and Lyanna, just giving a little channeling buff to your other followers. And that's the Aes Sedai. That's pretty much everything the Aes Sedai have access to. So you can see that there's a lot of followers here that you can, you know, search up at will whenever you need a certain piece, and you'll be in business. So let's move on now. I believe it's Aiel next. Yep. Alright, the big hitters for Aiel, you'll see front and centre there is Ruach, of course. Already mentioned these plus combat strength. Fantastic in traits, because those numbers are going to get real big. There is less Aiel, so it has less of a ceiling than perhaps Adlorna or Elaine, but you'll get it up to that ceiling more consistently than you will Adlorna or Elaine. They're never really actually reaching their ceilings. Whereas you will be at yours, it will be 10 or 11 or so, and you'll be feeling good about that every few turns when Ruach comes around. Bear, on the other hand, has a very powerful effect because she can reduce any follower, not just Aiel, but any follower, by any amount of resources equal to the amount of Aiel in your party. So again, this can be up to, I think it's 11 Aiel, it might be 10, you'll see them all, you're about to see them all anyway. So you can add it up and do the math better than I can. But she can reduce any follower by that cost, both in favour and coins. So, you know, if you have 10 Aiel, you can get a free Sorilea or a free Null Sharon or anything pretty much. So that's a really powerful effect, and she is free if Melaine is in your party, which is worth noting. So Melaine becomes a very linchpin part of the Aiel game plan, because if she is killed by the time they get to tier 3, then they can't get Bear for free, and it's 4 and 4 with the trait reduction, so kind of pricey. And then Sorilea, on the other hand, has a nuts ability. She can cancel cards with a level lower than the amount of Aiel in your party. So if you only have Sorilea, which you're not going to have by the time you hit tier 3, you'll have quite a lot of Aiel in a traits game by the time you hit tier 3. But if you only had Sorilea, she can cancel a Blood Knife Ring. She can cancel a Smooth Skirts or a Portal Stone. If you've got 5 Aiel in total, you can cancel anything in the tier 1 deck. If you've got 7 Aiel in total, you can cancel anything at level 6 or below. That's basically how it works. It's a really powerful effect. Melaine and Sulin, basic economy here for the Aiel. The favour reduction doesn't come until tier 2, and it is a bit on the pricey side with 4 favour cost on the Sulin. But some other things, you know, if you prepare for that, you're going to need a lot of favour in the second tier for both Sulin and Ruach, respectively. If you prepare for that, then you should be fine. And Melaine, as we've already covered, very important part of the free Bear plan. And then through Bear, you can then get a free Amis, who we'll see in just a moment. Aes and Avienda here for the utility on the Aiel. Aes giving a turbocharge to our others, so you can get that Cerealia back 1 turn quicker, you can get Ruach back 1 turn quicker, you can get Bear back 1 turn quicker, and you can be doing some absolutely disgusting stuff. Avienda, on the other hand, can pick up Terangirls from the discard pile, so if you've got a Blood Knife Ring, a Dream Spike, anything like that, you can just grab it right back up again as soon as it hits the bin. Well, as soon as you draw an action, once it's hit the bin, you can replace an action. And yeah, the free if Bear is in your party on Aes, important to note. And finally, the supporting cast, we have Bin and Chiad can add their levels together to play up to a tactics level 10. Can be especially handy for characters that don't have access to military as a base. And generally, you know, so a Gwyn and Nynaeve, we're talking there, that don't have military on their character board, can get a really nice amount of value from the Aiel, because as you can see, there's a lot of military levels here. You got Assist and Disarm. Bin and Chiad together up to level 10 can play anything. There's some good value and some free stuff here as well. Free with the Bin and Chiad with each other, and if a wise one for Bale is pretty much always a free Disarm with Mil 6, which is nice. But that pretty much closes out the Aiel, and one thing I will just say before I move on to the Andorans is that what I found is it can be a slow mid game. It's a very slow early game, and it can be a slow mid game. But if you get to the late game with the Aiel, you will be absolutely slapping people. Cerealia can cancel anything. Bear can make anything free. Ruach can give you a shit ton of combat strength. There is no stopping the Aiel once they get everything online, and it is probably the scariest thing to be across the table from in any game that's gone more than 2 hours. which in our league games happens quite often, so definitely watch out for the Aiel. Few in number, high in strength. So move on to the Andorans now. There's a few different combat strength options available here based on Warders, Andorans, and sort of an Aes Sedai. Gareth Broom we've already covered. And a lane I mentioned earlier can get very big with the Andorans. They have the most amount of followers out of all of the traits, with I think 24 in total, which means that this lane can be massive. Of course, you're probably not going to have all of the Andorans in your party, because that is an awful lot of recruiting to do, but this will get pretty big, and by the time you tier 3 you'll have a lot of them, because there's a ton of cheap lower cost Andorans and Andorans you can get for free if you're playing and prioritising the right orders of doing things. So all big hitters there on the top row, and ones with potential crossover with Warder, that you can take away that tool from a player who's picked Warder by picking the step in up early on. Min could be free for a Rand, even if it's not, it only costs you 1/1 and gives you so much utility when it comes to digging through that deck, that I thought she deserved to be on the big hitters page rather than the utility page. Everyone knows the power of Min, I don't need to sell that. Reen Halfwalk can cancel the smooth skirts, or a Foxhead Medallion, or a well-turned Calves, and there might be a couple of other things as well. There is a couple of other things as well, like Eavesdrop, Pilfered Plans, Full Box, there's quite a few. Reen Halfwalk, great value, everyone knows that. Dial In, on the other hand, just an exceptionally powerful ability to at any time be able to draw a card. If someone's about to kill that last Forsaken and you don't have anything to interrupt their battle card, you can tap Dial In. You can peek with Min. Is it a fighting dirty? Goes to the bottom if it's not. Draw another one. It's a fighting dirty. Never mind their battle. Dial In. Very very powerful effect to be able to use at any time, and those at any time effects are a lot of use usually, and probably some of the most underrated effects in the game from what I see players prioritizing, so definitely look out for those. Can also be free if you already have a lane, so that's a great curve once you hit tier 3, because you're likely to have a lot of coins stacked up, and dialing's free after that. So moving on to the Andoran economy, there's a lot here. You have the reducers in Morghast and Basel-Gil, great to pick up early on. If you're planning to actually go to Cairhienin a lot, then Almond Bunt is a great option, gives you an extra action when you do. Nori, a great one to get for free in Cairhienin if your trait is available at the time, because then every time you recruit another one, you get to draw a card off him, and if you have Min, you get to peek at that card, and so on and so on. And Hatch, of course, another great reducer, especially in traits games. It's more likely that cards of your trait will end up in the tavern row if other players flip them, because it costs one of each extra for them, so they're more likely to go, I don't want to pay that, and leave it in the tavern, which makes Hatch even better. And finally, Tom in the late game can be free if you are a channeler, and provide some extra coins when moving to big capital cities. In terms of utility, this is kind of still economy, but sort of utility. Samuel Hart can steal from people, Elves can reduce some costs, and we've got both the Warders here to prevent Warders and Aes Sedai from being discarded. Hamar puts levels on people, and Damothlin can recruit your tier 1s back from the discard pile, so if you have lost any of those key Andoran pieces like Min that you wanted to have for the entirety of the game, Damothlin can pick those right back up again if you search him out of the deck. And the supporting cast here, selection of friendly faces from across Andor, some more loved than others. Looking at you going for the others. Some more loved. That's Eben Hopwell. You know everybody loves an Eben Hopwell. Or a Linny. Yeah, not too much to say about these. Standard mix of assist and disarm, and a couple buffs to follower levels. Moving on to the Borderlanders. One of the probably strongest in the game traits is Borderlanders, because they not only have a Agelmar who generates troops for each Borderlander in your party, but they have Lan who saves troops for each Borderlander in your party. So if you get both of these at tier 3, especially if you have Davram alongside them, stopping you from losing to fists on the map, you're never going to run out of troops. And that is kind of nutty. Alorna as well, mentioned it earlier, you can steal that away if somebody else has an Aes Sedai trait, make sure they lose one of their biggest tools, and Lelaine by the same token can be taken away, especially if they've gone for the Remander first, and you can, yeah, then in turn just pick the Lelaine up for free. And as I already talked about with her, a very powerful effect for just picking up any actions tier 2 or lower from the discard pile. Economy has less on the table for the Borderlanders. You can get an action from Warders with Sleep, but you're probably not going to be triggering that so often with the Borderlander trait. Nazima, on the other hand, gains troops from the early game, so he can be a nice one to pick up if you have a way to exhaust him and trigger that effect. And Uno, of course, is a fantastic one that you want to get early to reduce your favour cost for the entirety of the game. You can get him on turn 1 and he costs a single coin because you already have that reduction, and then you'll be sitting pretty at -1, -2 on your cost for the rest of the game. And in the late game, if you're looking for someone to pick up with that discount, you can't go wrong with Noel Charon. 3 points every time he exhausts. In terms of utility, the Borderlanders have a few options. Alana, as we've already covered, can pick up orders from the discard pile, a very powerful effect for certain characters to have. I'm thinking anyone with leadership on their board, you know, really wants that. Egwene, Rand and Perrin all love an Alana. Hurrying on the other hand can pick up tactics, so if you're wanting to get some military cards back, maybe you want to keep picking up a Two Rivers longbow or a flanking or something and recycling it, you can do that with Hurrying. Cairhienin can protect an Aes Sedai if you've got someone like Borderlander and you don't want them to get killed off and bought back by the Nynaeve who picked Aes Sedai for some reason or whatever. There's, you know, Cairhienin can be a helping hand, plus extra channeling levels if you're Rand. Pavara also offers those along with the aforementioned combat strength against Dark Friends. And Ingtar, if you're a Gwaine, you can repeatedly lose to Ingtar to generate points from your tier 1 ability and draw action cards. Like intentionally lose to him as long as there's enough in the discard pile that you can't beat them. And then for all characters in the late game, searching up the Horn of Valyr usually pretty good. That you do want to pop him more in the early if you're planning to use the Horn in the late, so that it's easier to pop him and then the Horn will grow over time. And the Rishma is basically Nynaeve Bane. If there's a Blossoms or a Death Gate that you want to play, just play it with an Rishma and Nynaeve won't be picking it up because it won't be there. The supporting cast, final few: disarm, assist, buff, standard stuff. Nothing too exciting here. Some free requisites, so those might get picked up just because they're free at certain points by people, but nothing fancy here to shout about. Just rounds out the Borderlander cast, and Borderlanders are done now. A very solid trait. We're at half an hour, and I think we've done 4 slides. No, 4 out of 10 of the traits, and an intro, so this should be under an hour. Cairhienin's next, and some of these as well have less to talk about. We've gone through some of the biggest factions already, some of the biggest traits. Cairhienin is going to be one of those with fewer. Just 2 cards for the big hitters. Galdrian makes 2 troops every time he's exhausted and can be free, so worth mentioning, especially if you could attach something to him. I have an infinite troop loop in mind with Not So Tired that Galdrian is waiting for me to attach a couple of those up and get going with. So there is some nutty things you can do with Galdrian for sure, even though he has a simple effect. Talmanas, on the other hand, just solid plus strength. As we've already sort of mentioned, these are very powerful effects and traits. You're going to have a lot of followers of your specific trait, and Cairhienin at their limit are no exception. I think all traits have at least 10 followers, so you know, these numbers can get pretty high. There might be one that has like 8, but I don't think any are actually that low anymore. I think most of them have at least 10. But yeah, Talmanas and Galdrian are your heavy hitters for the Cairhienin, unless you wanted to count Laris, but I put her on the economy page because I didn't think I could quite justify it. Laris, of course, making favour when you move to Tar Valon. A big reason you might pick Cairhienin, because a lot of characters do like going to Tar Valon, especially if you're on a Gwaine. You can bounce there and get insane value with Laris. Idrian, on the other hand, is going to draw you some extra cards whenever you recruit, so she's a fantastic one to get early on, along with all of the bottom row. Well, sorry, Dobrain is more of a late game generator, of course, but the Dagian and the Slander are going to help you reduce your other followers through the rest of the game. Maybe not so much the Dagian, but if somebody else has Aes Sedai, great to steal that away from them. Same for the nobles. There is a fair amount of crossover with nobles in Cairhienin, so that is something you want to watch out for if you want either of those traits. For the utility, just a couple cards here. Big Shield, if for some reason you need it. If you're playing against a Rand and you just want to keep him down, maybe you search up an early Berowin if you drew a shield. Like, it can happen. I can see a world where that happens, and you attach it to her and you just terrorize Rand. And then the Olva, as we already sort of discussed in the last section with Ingtar. Horn of Valyr, very powerful card in the late game. Somebody else plays it, you get to pick it up for free. You can't go wrong with that. Even if they discarded it rather than playing it, you still get to pick it up for free. So, although more valuable now that Ingtar exists, because the Horn of Lear gets into the game more often. Especially if somebody has that Borderlander trait. Bit of assist, bit of disarm. Sure, you're starting to see a trend in these supporting casts. There's not too much to say about them. They are just the extra bodies that are helping you get those counts up to make the plus battle effects really strong and some of the other effects more strong. The 6th trait is Nobles. A much unloved trait by many. But here's 4 very powerful reasons why you might want to pick it. Berylune makes Mayenne an actual viable location with a lot of value, and it makes it the only place where you can get a character and 2 favour in the same turn, except for potentially Johanna. Not to be overlooked. 2 on the other hand, any Challoin follower, reduce the cost to 0. You want to pick up an Olivia? Fantastic, have her for free. Johanna Rishma, so you can get rid of a card that none of you wanted to play. Cad Swain, Logain. There's a lot of expensive channelers that if you can get for free suddenly become very good and very worth the nothing to add to your team. Goldrian, as I've already covered in some earlier sections, great powerful effect with the 2 troops and some nasty combos that can be made with him, especially with Not So Tired involved, and Dialin has that anytime draw effect that can really get under your opponent's skin. And one thing I will say about that, you don't always just want to save it for when someone's about to kill a Forsaken. I would on the turn that I get it, I'm probably not using it unless I really need the card for something in that turn, but I can't think of that circumstance. But I'm saving it, and then if there's no point before my turn comes around again when I wanted to use it, then I'll use it at the end of the turn of the person that's before me. Because then it will get an extra rotate at the start of my turn and be around that much quicker again. So that is something to keep in mind for those anytime reactions. If you want to get them to cool down slightly faster, use them at the end of the person before you's turn, and those will get an extra spin in for you. Moving on to the economy for the nobles, very, very solid economy. We've got favour and coin reduction for the nobles themselves, along with coin generation from Colavia, and some reduction of Seanchan, Tyron and Andorans to boot alongside it. So you can take those tools away from other players. You know, if someone has Cairhienin, you can take Slande away from them. If someone has Andoran, you take more Geist away from them. It's very annoying. Nobles, great economy. Definitely something they've got going for them, and with the amount of nobles that you have, you can build up a very big party with this trait, especially with the starting resources that you have as well. And if you happen to get a Battleborn, there are a lot of Daystamar nobles, so that count is going to be very high. I've had some plus 16 Battleborns before with nobles, because there is that many Daystamar and you can just find them so cheaply and easily. A fair number of free requisites available here as well, so those are definitely worth watching out for if you happen to be in an area that's that can get a certain character for free, like Turak and Falmer. Definitely the sort of thing you want to keep in mind as you're progressing through the game. In utility, front and centre there, we've got Darlin, the turbo follower, and I think he is the linchpin piece that makes the nobles really tick personally. If you can attach some action cards, Olmouth playing, to your other nobles, and use Darlin to rotate them extra quick, you can start doing some unfair stuff if people don't devote their time to disrupting you with kill spells or whatever. So Darlin, definitely one to prioritise, and a reasonable cost as well. Elysian can make your charges bigger, and if you don't have access to military, then he's always going to be 10 charge. So if you happen to get a charge, definitely find yourself an Elysian, head to Almouth, get that attached to him so he can play on repeat, and on repeat is going to be very often if you've got that Darlin in your team as well. Tywin, I don't want to talk about Tywin, and Andoran, we've already mentioned, can gain you some favour. Supporting cast, standard mix here, assist and disarm, nothing too fancy. Only a couple of free requisites available, but yeah, that's going to be a wrap on the nobles. You can see there's a lot of them, So definitely keep that in mind. You can get a lot for a big Battleborn or a big for the light or something like that. Alright, soldiers. Now I got to play these the first time for the other day and they are a bit funky. As you can see, there is no plus combat strength for soldiers, but there is a plus combat strength for both Cairhienin and Ogier, and a plus troops for Two Rivers. So if other people haven't picked them, if no one's picked Two Rivers or Cairhienin, then you might be able to scoop up a fair amount of these and get a decent bonus stacked up. If somebody else has, then you're more interested in just stealing these away from them to significantly hamstring one of your opponent's combat engines in the late game. Either way, like, you're going to have a couple at least, as long as you're keeping it in mind from pretty much the start of the game. So that's the thing that you want to be keeping in mind, is that, yes, the soldiers themselves have some individually strong effects, but it's less about the number of soldiers you have and more about the numbers of these other types that you have. Two Rivers, Ogier, and Cairhienin. And then some of the soldiers give you great utility, as we'll see, and economy is also not so bad. No discount for the soldiers themselves, but Whitecloak, Borderlander, and Aiel favour discounts all round, and a Dorian will generate a shit ton of favour on anybody that likes to go through Trollocs. I'm thinking Matt, Rand, Perrin, you know, even a naive or going into the late game can get value out of a Dorian. But everybody knows that Dorian is very strong. I don't need to harp on the merits of that. It is one of the major selling points of picking soldiers, to be honest, is that you get to pick up an earlier Dorian and run with it. Mazima as well, of course, especially powerful on map. So some economy options, while not specifically for soldiers, but definitely lots of favour reduction in some of those other traits. And yeah, soldiers don't do much utility. They like hitting things, and utility is not hitting things. However, Furic Creed does know a thing or two about plotting and Tai'Shar, so you might want to pick him up if you want to grab a careful word back, or a pilfered plans, or whatever. And finally, quite a few soldiers filling in the ranks, all military. So if you want to build up a high military party, if you're one of the girls, or if you want to build it up for Battleborn, or an especially big Season Destroy, definitely going to be able to do that by picking a soldier trait. Also worth noting, there's a lot of males in tier 1 for soldier, so if you're a Matt trying to get to tier 2, soldier is definitely a very respectable decision. On to the Two Rivers. Now, the Two Rivers are a bit unique. They are probably the strongest option on Perrin, flat out, but harder to work with all of the other characters, so keep that in mind. Tamil 4 can get up to about 11 or 12, I think, troops whenever you exhaust him in a battle, and you can use these plus troop effects even when you're just going through Trollocs to generate some troops. It'll come back around a few turns, so even if you're not planning to fight, just get the plus 12 troops, because you've got the plus 12 troops. You lose one to the Trolloc, sure, but like, plus 12. Daes Congar, I thought, deserved to be on the big hitters page rather than the utility page, because she's Daes fucking Congar. And nobody can mess with you. Well, at least no one can steal your characters or favour. And that is something that the Two Rivers have going for them, is they're very protective of their own. Although they don't have any way to protect from discards, but from theft, very much so. The economy for the Two Rivers, very unique as well. Rather than being based on reductions or generations from followers being exhausted, all of the economy cards here give you benefits when you move to Emmonsfield specifically. This is what makes it really great for Perrin in particular, because Perrin loves to go to villages and he can jump anywhere with his Wolf Dream, so getting to and from Emmonsfield, not particularly difficult for him. He can not get stuck there in the late as some people would if they tried to go back there, but he can just jump out again in a few turns once his tier 3's up. Honestly, there's not much reason to leave if you have all 5 of these, because a tier 3 Perrin moving to Emmonsfield with all 5 of these characters right here gets 2 troops, 2 coins, a favour, an action, and 2 character reveals, and he has double his base combat strength against any fights that he encounters because he's in a village, which would mean he's on 10 base combat strength. Well, 12 if you count those 2 troops, plus any you had before that, plus the Tamal Thor, hopefully. So, assembling all 5 of these is key, and maintaining them. And it's really what makes the Two Rivers tick, especially if you are Perrin, or if not, I guess you just have to get to Emmonsfield anyway, because there's so much value to be gained from these followers. It just makes one big super location that's really nice in the late game. In terms of utility, aside for the aforementioned Daes Congar, we've got Sembui, her counterpart, who prevents coin and action theft, and Scratch, everybody's favourite Two Rivers cat, can cause a bit of a nuisance, putting himself on top of an action deck to interrupt another player from drawing. Well, do at the start of their turn, so you have to predict it a little bit, but Scratch can be a fun one, especially with the Two Rivers trait, because for you, he costs 1 coin, because you have the standard -1/-1 reduction. Very cheap, very affordable. If you put him on top of an action deck and somebody else draws him and reveals him, he costs 3 coins and a favour for them. So they are a lot less likely to want to pay that cost, meaning he likely goes back into the tavern row, where you can recruit him again next turn for 1 coin. And a couple of followers to round out the mix, Branovia and Daniel Lewin. Nothing too special going on here. And that'll be it for the Two Rivers. I think we've just got 2 traits left, so we're running around bang on time for an hour long. Thanks for everyone that stayed with us through this. I'm not going to waste time talking about that now. We'll do a closing bit at the end, because that's how closing bits work. Whitecloaks have a few big hitters available. GFR Bornhold, mainly for the combat strength, is your biggest asset, but as an hour, especially on Matt, can be absolutely disgusting with the amount of action card draws that he generates, because every time a Whitecloak gets exhausted in your party, you draw an action. In fact, just the other day, I decided to play Whitecloak Rand for a laugh. A terrible decision, by the way, because there's no channeling in Whitecloaks and Rand needs channeling. But I happened to have a party full of Whitecloaks, including Azanawa, and I happened to flip over a Grendel, who at the start of a battle exhaust my entire team. An entire team that I had not had a chance to trigger the benefit from Azanawa on so far that game, because I had no way to exhaust them. So Grendel drew me a lovely 8 cards or something, which then compounded with Rand's tier 3 ability to give me a very nice 15 combat strength bonus on that turn, and result in a lot of random discards at the end of the turn, which actually weren't too unfavourable. So, Azanawa definitely has some power. You want to watch out for that one. I'm glad if you can get him for free. Excellent. If not, he'll be a bit reduced anyway because of the economy that the Whitecloaks have and the trait reduction. And that extra point whenever you exhaust him is very valuable. Of course, you can play things like For the Light as well as Sorrowful Execution or a big Cover Me, so definitely has the ability to play some cards and get himself exhausted, unlike sometimes the when exhausted effects of lower level characters that don't have so many actions to play in late game. Alright, for the economy, the Whitecloaks are fairly strong, but fairly simple. They don't branch out into the other traits with their reductions. They just have -1/-1 of each with Dane and Trom, and Abdel Amerna generates coins when a Whitecloak is revealed. Tend to go for Trom first myself, and generally, because you just cost the 1 coin with your reduction, and then the Dane will cost just the 1 favour with your reduction from both your trait and the Trom, which is, you know, a reasonable way to start the game. And then after that, hopefully if you've got Aes Sedai, you've got it up to level 4 by that point to get the free Amerna, or if not, then, you know, you pick the Amerna up as well anyway as soon as you can, because 1 coin every time you dig up a Whitecloak is gonna start reducing their cost, basically. A couple of interesting utility options available to the Whitecloaks in these new followers. I know Siren lets you look at someone else's hand, so if you're doing this on Matt especially, you can do it in the middle of a fight, make sure no one has a cancel and when you're using your ability or whatever. It's a really interesting effect, and I've had some fun with it recently, so being able to look at another player's hand, check if the coast is clear, definitely a handy effect to have. And Faisal sort of does a similar thing, except he does it with the top card of a character deck. So if you're not quite sure whether you can take a fight and you wanna just scope it out first, find yourself a way to exhaust Asnim Faisal, and you can scope it out. Of course, it does reveal it to everyone else as well, so keep that in mind. To close things out, a couple of followers. Whitecloak action boost from Pedro and Niall can be handy to get some of those ones that are on the cusp up an extra level, so they can play just that 1 more powerful card, you know. You can get Galad up to level 10, for example. So Pedro now definitely a nice one to have, and he's going to be free damn near every time unless you're really playing in a weird way. Balor on the other hand, if you need a big Aes Sedai, quick, perfect card to pick up. We're on the last one, everyone. I was just whittling over to the bin, and now you get an Azamir. I'm getting tired. An Azama. Oh, I missed the Azama. I did it as I was talking. It'll be a little bit. Don't get that on TV. The Warders. Sorry for that clap. God, that was probably terrible. Hope you're not wearing headphones. This is going well. Let's get back to the show. Step in! Can be exhausted to gain +1 combat strength for each warder in your party. He's the linchpin part of the team. Don't get him stolen away by somebody with the Andoran trait, because that would be bad for you. Lan, of course, you do want to steal away from somebody with the Borderlander trait, because they'll get a lot of value out of him, and we don't like our opponents having value. Elias obviously has a very powerful effect, and the reason for the follower above him being on this slide almost is a combination between the two. Ivon can prevent warders from being discarded, and that means that the warders are probably the most resilient trait because they have an in-trait way of protecting their trait followers. Once you get Ivon, you know, unless like some circumstances lead to him being tapped and people are like repeatedly targeting your stuff, you're not going to lose your warders, which is really nice. It means that you don't have to worry about the stepping getting killed off because you've got the Ivon there to protect him, and it even means that you can set up some really powerful combos with characters like Elias who have a discard trigger on them. If you discard Elias to recruit a follower for free, Ivon can just prevent that from being discarded straight away. So you can use Elias, exhaust Ivon, and you just got yourself a free follower at 0 cost. There are some other things you can do with Ivon as well. If you want to attach a blood knife ring to a warder, for example, go ahead. Why the hell not? Ivon can keep it covered. And really, what else are you going to do with your Gawain that you picked up because he's a warder and gives +1 to step in? You may as well attach a blood knife to him. You know you want to. For the economy, very little on offer for the warders. They have Sleet that allows them to draw action cards. You want to get that as soon as possible, really, because there's a limited amount of times you are going to be able to trigger it in the game, so you want to get those in when you can. Cairhienin, on the other hand, just going to gain favour every now and then when a Seanchan's revealed. Not something that you're going to be triggering too often, but you might get a couple of favour over the course of the game. Plus, it's just an extra warder to buff up that number for stepping. And the final slide is the utility. It's not the final slide, there's another one after this. The utility page for the warders includes Hamar, who can put levels on people, very handy. Maxim, who can prevent Aes Sedai, just in case you weren't happy with Blood Knife Ring on Gawain, you can put a Blood Knife Ring on one of your random Aes Sedai instead, and then save him with Maxim, so that you can save your Ivon up to stop Elias from dying. Double duty, you know. Or maybe if you put the Blood Knife Ring on the Brigitte, you might just want to let her die because you get a bunch of extra points. Some little bits of utility here, not too much for the warders. Generally, their selling points are their resilience, their access to combat strength, and the funky combos you can do with Ivon. And for the supporting cast, Jaime can give you a bit of extra combat strength if you manage to get a couple of Aes Sedai. Not all impossible, because there's a lot of them in the game. Gawain, as we've already mentioned, is a piece of garbage, and we're not going to talk about him aside from attached blood knife rings. And Morel, highlighted in red there to show she's not actually a warder, but is a warder relevant effect. If you should happen to lose any, if someone kills Ivon or one sneaks past, she can recruit them again from the discard pile, and she's free if you have 2 or more warders. So if you or someone else reveals her and leaves her in the tavern row, you can get her for free pretty easily when you've got the warder trait. Alright, that's actually the end now. Thank you, everyone. If you've made it this far, thank you for being here and watching the entirety of this video. Traits is going to be really fun. I'm looking forward to the League games in March. This variant is going to be available forever in casual games, so if you ever want to play traits, it's not going anywhere, don't worry. There may be some changes to it as things were in this video, and changes to specific cards. So this video is kind of time sensitive in that regard, but traits is always going to be available in the game for you to play in your casuals. It's not going anywhere. In terms of the competitive league, it is only in use for the month of March. For the regular league games, the Beltane Invitational at the end of the first quarter is back to regular, traditional 3rd age with no variants involved at all, so you don't have to worry about that if you're looking at an invitational spot. I think that's pretty much everything I have to say for this video, and I've talked for a very long time by now. Pretty much bang on 1 hour. So let's just say spank the like button for RJ, spank the sub button because the subs like being spanked. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what your favourite trait is. If you have played a bunch of traits games, let me know what your favourite trait is. If you haven't played any traits games at all, let me know which one you're most looking forward to trying out. And if you want to say something extra, let me know what your favourite combination is, especially if it's different to what your favourite trait overall is, but your particular combination of trait and player character to pick. That'd be cool to know. And with all that being said, Tai'Shar, I'll see you next time.